In the darkest nights, we find our light. Battered souls, but we won't lose sight. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, never alone. Through every trial, we carry on. Surviving together, we stand tall. United forever. Strength and courage will overcome. Oh, surviving together, victorious, never, never alone. Hand in hand, we'll face the unknown.
We see you, we hear you, and we believe you.
Hey everyone, how you doing today on this Saturday? Crystal's here. Welcome. You have landed at Surviving Together, a safe space for trauma survivors to come together and build community on their healing journey, as well as providing trauma-related education for all. And I welcome you to this Saturday, whether it's warm or cold where you are. It was warm this morning or yesterday morning. Now it's freezing cold. So, you know, I'm having a little fight with Mother Nature right now, but she always wins. So don't even know why I'm doing it. But I do want to bring up our guest for today, who is Jessica Hansen. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Jessica is somebody who is in warmer weather than I am today. So, am I cold? I am cold. Can you tell? I've got a sweater and I've got my thing on. Yeah, I was too lazy to go down and get to the heater and bring it up. So I'm layered up today. And my brother actually got me this for Christmas, and it is quite warm, I will say. Um, but Jessica, welcome. She is an amazing woman. She is somebody who I met last year at the book tour. Well, the start of our book launch for Begin It Now, right? This little book. Oh, that little book up there. Looky there. Do you see my awards? See all that? Isn't that nice? Where do you have your awards displayed somewhere?
I do. I have an altar in my bedroom that
Oh,
is
awesome.
it's ever changing. It just has things that are very meaningful to me. And
Yeah,
so my awards are up there right now. Yeah.
awesome. And you won, was it Humanitarian of the Year?
In April of last year, I won the Global Human Rights Award, and
Human
then in
rights. Okay.
November, I won Humanitarian Impact and Woman of the Year.
She is amazing, gal. She is amazing. She's a fellow co-author in the book, and so we got to meet November of last year, and I have to say she's someone who has become a dear friend of mine and just incredible. And we're going to talk about your backstory because of the topic that we're going to talk about. But if you would just kind of bring everybody a little up to speed on your current position, your current company, what you're doing right now.
Absolutely. I am currently the CEO of Alliance for Smiles, which is an international medical nonprofit that provides cleft lip and palate surgeries for hundreds of children in Africa, Asia, Central, and South America every year, as well as equipment and training for local medical teams to try to bring them up to speed to be able to provide quality care on their own without foreign groups coming in and having to help out. Yeah.
And isn't that the important part? Because the foreign group's only there for a certain amount of time. These people are there the rest of the time. So if they can do it themselves,
Absolutely.
that's just absolutely amazing. Can I ask you about your recent trip, or is it a hush hush thing?
Oh, absolutely. We just
Okay.
got back from Ecuador a
Ah,
few weeks ago. We went up into the mountains. Normally, we're in a city called Guayaquil. Um, this time we had to go to an area called Guaranda. And so it's an area of very high need. And we did a lot of surgeries in a very short amount of time, and worked deep with the local team to try to ensure that they knew how to care for cleft lip and palate patients long term. And we'll probably be back in Ecuador in a few months, maybe in the fall, back in Guayaquil to give more surgeries. And it was a beautiful experience. The families and patients were amazing. The local hospital was welcoming and supportive, and overall, very transformative experience for all involved.
That's awesome. I think that's wonderful. What's your role when you're there? Because you're not a medical professional, correct?
I'm not a medical professional. So we take a team of about 20 volunteers on any surgical or medical mission that we do around the world. And there are about 5 non medical roles on each team, and then about 15 medical roles. So in the non medical roles, it's everything from the mission director, who's in charge of everything, just
Hmm.
kind of like an orchestra conductor for the mission, making sure everyone has what they need, they know what their job is, they know how to engage with one another and the local team. To what the role I was in this time was as record keeper. This was my first time doing this, and I'm trying to really learn every role.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, record keeper is just, you're the first person the kids and parents meet. You register the kids, you track their vitals before surgery, you track how they're doing after surgery. You just kind of keep track of all of their medical documents and information as they move through the hospital experience, from the
Mhm.
operating room to the post anesthesia room to the ward where they recover. So you're kind of making sure everyone knows everything they need to know to make sure that the child gets the highest quality care all through the process. Yeah.
Wow, you saw it really just across the ground from start to finish with that. That must have been Was that a unique experience to be able to really, or had you kind of been through that before with medical team?
I have been the mission director before, so I would say I've seen the overarching, like, what needs to happen from a very high level. What was unique about being a record keeper is that you're really into the nitty-gritty. Like, I knew what people's pulse was like. I knew what their specific health issues were and what health issues disqualify you for that moment from getting surgery, because it puts you at too much risk. If you're
Mm.
malnourished and you're underweight, it's
Ooh,
very dangerous
yeah.
to get surgery. And so this was such an interesting perspective to see exactly, like, if you come in with a really bad cold, they can't give you anesthesia because your breathing is sort of impaired, and
Compromise,
we have to put
yeah.
you on the schedule for the next time we come. So it was like a nitty-gritty experience of
You're
understanding.
touching every person who's coming into that hospital for that
Exactly.
reason. Wow. Wow, that's pretty impactful.
Yeah.
That's great. And I wanted to start with that because one, I just think what you're doing and what your organization is doing is just so amazing. And with the long-term vision of letting locals help themselves, because so often that gets, forgotten. And I was just having a conversation with somebody else about this who whose friend was doing something in a totally different aspect, but the same idea was to get locals to help themselves, right? And so we got in this whole conversation, and I of course thought of you with what you're doing. But so let's pivot just a little bit, and I'm going to say hi to everybody who's come through. I think Carmel, Body Illusion said she's lurking and listening. Hi, Patty. John is here. Yes, John, I'm freezing my ass off. John's on the other side of the state from me. So he's in the thumb portion, and I'm over here on this side of the state, and we're both freezing. So, and I think I said Carmel. So, yeah, hi to everybody. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about some of the different jobs and the different places that you lived when you were doing refugee work, and kind of what that refugee work was, what your interactions were like.
Absolutely. I did not set out intending to work with refugees specifically at all. When I was preteen to teenager, my beautiful mother, who is from Thailand, so from Southeast Asia, shared with me that her experience in school had been one, she's the oldest of five children, and the four
Mhm.
younger children were brothers. So she has four younger brothers. And even though she's the eldest, which in Asian households traditionally has been a place of honor,
Mhm.
it doesn't quite count the same if you're a girl. And so girls are often pulled out of school, which my mother was at a much younger age than her brothers, and asked to work. And in addition, a number of her friends in middle school were offered jobs at restaurants, hotels around Asia and Japan and Korea and China. And in many of those circumstances, it was a lure into exploitation and trafficking. And so when I was young, I learned that
What
all
year are
these
I need to stop you just for a quick second. What year are we talking about when your
about
mom was
when my mom was young. So I
Yeah,
think she's 70 something now. So this is back. But it's still a
we're talking in the
significant.
60s. Yeah, I was just well, because most everybody knows I'm doing the human trafficking series, of course, and Southeast Asia is an area that I don't have anybody representative with now, but I have somebody who has a connection with somebody, and I'm going to be, and it just blew my mind when you're saying, even though we've talked about this before, it just, all of a sudden, dang, went connection wise. And it's the same type of thing of luring them away with promises of good jobs, better circumstances, whatever. So, whoa, that was just kind of a hit moment for me where those two worlds were colliding a little bit. So I am sorry. So your mom got pulled out of school.
Yeah.
Let's
So
continue.
Yeah, so I think the thing where I had a similar moment when I was young was that I recognized that I have four uncles. I have a lot of cousins in Thailand, several of whom are female and were around the same age, and that they are continuing to face a different set of standards and
Mm, hmm.
threats and risks in their lives. Not to say that any of us don't have threats and risks, but they're all different. And
Yeah.
because of where we were born, the threats and risks for us were different. Our opportunities were also different. My access to
Yeah.
education and healthcare and a certain degree of
Right.
safety was very different. And so I think becoming aware of that at a very young age made me want to help level the playing field, whatever that looked like in my life.
Yeah.
So it just felt very unfair and unjust. And I did my master's in social work, but with a focus on human trafficking, ending
Hmm.
human trafficking, supporting survivors of human trafficking. And in that thread, it led me to refugees because I, in grad school, was working in the refugee camps as an intern for an organization. I went to grad school in Sydney, Australia, and I interned at the Center for Refugee Research, which is based in Sydney. And they worked in Africa and Asia. And in Asia, they were working in the refugee camps along the border between Thailand and Burma. Because of my
Hmm.
background in language skills, I was a good fit for that internship. And
Yeah.
so these groups, similar to what you're saying about your understanding of trafficking, is that these refugees are in a very vulnerable situation where their own governments are trying to kill them or persecute them or jail them or in whatever way harm them. Host governments are not normally uh, willing to take care of refugees. They want them to go back and use their own country's resources. So they're stuck in this sort of limbo. And then you get people who come by and say, I'll give you a scholarship. I'll give you a job. Hand me your daughter. We will get her a great university in Norway. And then all of a sudden, you, out of desperation, have handed your daughter over to
Hmm.
these people who seem very well intentioned and kind. Of course they do. And you never see your daughter again, and her any documents or ID she had are destroyed. And she's
Yeah.
now in a cycle of exploitation and
Hmm.
trafficking. And so that's how I ended up working with refugees because of my university program and understanding just how vulnerable they are and
Mhm.
how people flee out of their houses in the middle of the night because a junta, an army comes through with guns and they're persecuting an ethnic minority, and they run out thinking, I'll come back tomorrow or next week. And
Yeah.
when I started working with refugees, the average length of displacement was 26 years. So you would flee in
Holy
the
crap.
night.
What?
Yeah,
I thought months was gonna come out of your mouth. I
26
mean,
years.
which was bad enough, but
And that does not
26.
include certain areas where there have been really protracted refugee situations like the Middle East and other places. It
Oh
doesn't
my.
even factor in. Um,
See, if
so
anything, I would have counted that as the protracted, right? I mean, that just sounds, oh, wow.
yeah, in
Jessica,
the
I'm
two,
stunned. I'm absolutely stunned. I mean, I've heard of people, 3, 5 years, even 10 years, but to
yeah.
say average in front of that 26-year stat is just,
Yeah. Before I moved to Kenya, I resettled about 11,000 Burundian refugees. So Burundi is right next to Rwanda. It's about the size of Maryland. It's populated by Hutus and Tutsis, and they had a series of 4 civil wars.
yeah.
Um, and the majority of them were displaced in 1972. And I resettled in the United States in about 2000, I think it was 2008 or 2009, maybe. Um, so most of them had been in refugee camps for almost 40 years
Oh
and
my
had
goodness.
never had their own home, never gone to school outside of a refugee camp, and had to learn how to adapt to life in Detroit and Houston and
Yeah.
LA
Oh my
after
Lord.
that
Talk
length of
about culture shock.
yeah,
Wow. Wow. Big time culture shock for that.
yeah. So that's how I ended up
So
working with refugees.
yeah, so you hear all their stories and you move on with your work, and you came to this point where you had a couple of different jobs that you could do, right? And what happened there?
Oh goodness. I mean, there were several stages through my career where I have tried a number of different careers. I worked in tech, I worked in intergovernmental at the United Nations, and I worked at a lot of nonprofits. And yeah, I would say a few things. One is that I was very eager to change the world. I think I was very optimistic and aspirational as a young person, like, oh, we gotta save the day. And my dream job was the United Nations, and I landed an internship and worked with them pretty much straight out of grad school because I had done so much work with UNHCR, which is the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees office. Um, in both Africa and Asia while I was in grad school. So I had a lot of exposure and experience with them. And
Oh, so you had oh, I missed a piece in your work there.
mm,
Kenya came next for some reason. I missed a piece in your
oh,
work. So
well,
you continued working with immigrant refugee people just in a different capacity, right?
yeah, yeah. If you look at the background that I have, my first job while I was in grad school, paid job was with MSF, which is Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières. And then from there, did internships with the Center for Refugee Research. We're going so far back. It's over 20 years ago, so I'm trying to remember exactly what order it all happened. But when I graduated with my master's, I started interning with UNHCR and working with them, and then got a job with the Women's Commission for Refugee Women and Children, which was part of the International Rescue Committee. Um, and then from there went to Mercy Corps, which while based in Portland, Oregon, I worked for them on the East Coast, and helped them do a number of education programs, including opening this museum called the Action Center to End World Hunger that was meant to really engage the public in New York. It was based in Tribeca, and it just
Okay.
educated people about refugees, about
Wow.
famine,
Yeah.
hunger, everything.
They need
Um,
one to yeah, do one on human trafficking like that.
yeah.
Right in
Oh,
New York City, wouldn't that be? Yeah.
absolutely. And actually, MSF used to do a traveling exhibit where you could experience a refugee camp, which was amazing and really a powerful
Oh,
first
wow.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one thing to even show pictures or have people give personal stories, but to then be able to put yourself in that environment. I
Yeah.
mean, you and I both know going from US to Kenya that there's just nothing quite like experiencing all that for yourself there.
And
Okay, so
I did
Jessica
working.
had a long history of working with people that I just totally skipped over. So she was working with a lot of people, and then she had an opportunity to work for the UN, which I'm sure when it first came in, you were like, hell yes.
And I did learn a lot, and I'm so grateful for the experience. In addition, I think having worked with the UN, you are set up well to work with other organizations because it is so
Mm,
respected and so well known.
yeah.
So I'm grateful for it in a number of ways. And when faced with the opportunity of continuing there or moving to something different, um, I think what I learned is I already knew I didn't want to be in politics. I had studied some international politics in school, and I didn't feel
Hmm.
like I was meant for the life of a politician. I felt like I was a humanitarian.
Hmm.
And basically, when you interact with the UN, you learn that it's just a lot of different politicians and politics engaging with one another because it's
Hmm.
representatives of every country.
Yep.
Um, and they are having to work together in a way that we do in our own governments. And then they're doing it at this higher level of governments trying to engage with each other. And even while I was there, things were happening like Sudan was on a rotating role with the Human Rights Council. So at the time, Sudan was committing genocide,
Yeah.
horrific acts, and they're weighing in on whether or not like rape is a crime.
Yeah.
And I really struggled with that. I do accept that we need to hear each other and that we need to have open dialogue, but there are some basic things that were
Hmm.
difficult for me while I was there. So I could see that some more small, nimble nonprofits weren't subject to the red tape and the bureaucracy that organizations like the UN were. And I was really ready to hit the ground running as opposed to sitting in meeting rooms and arguing about things that I already felt like I knew the answers for myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you ended up going to Kenya.
Yeah, I had been to Kenya before with different internships and different jobs. So I'd been there for short periods of time. And so I ended up moving there. Yeah, I was offered a really amazing role based in DC where I had started to build a life and had a long-term partner. Um, or I could go help this brand new organization that was trying something new that felt really in line with what I was coming to realize was the way I believe we can have more of an impact in helping to end
Hmm.
extreme poverty. So the organization is called New Route International. It still exists, even though its model continues to evolve, which is one of the cool things about it. It's like a very quickly evolving and adapting organization. But basically, our role as a small team of external experts was to come and assist larger teams of Kenyans to develop agricultural programs, water and sanitation programs, public health programs, education, which was the program I was working on. So it was me, but it was me on a team of 30 some odd Kenyans
Hmm.
and working collaboratively to not only create the educational programming, but also to build income generating activities, to build sustainability so that when myself and other external folks leave, the Kenyans had built something that was running smoothly and could scale and adapt it to changing needs of
Hmm.
the community on their own. And so I walked away from a pretty cushy position based in Washington, D.C., and worked unpaid for a very long time in a rural part of southwestern Kenya on the border with Tanzania, slogging through the mud every day. There were definitely days where I was like, oh, could have been in that cushy apartment back in DC, but still don't regret it for a moment. It was one of the best, most challenging, but most enlightening and enlivening experiences of my life.
And I want to speak a little bit about, some of your experiences there. They weren't all great.
No.
You witnessed and heard a lot of things that, in retrospect, really bothered you, right? So unfortunately, you came across some situations that were pretty, looking back, were pretty traumatic for you as well with this trip.
Yeah,
Is that the same trip I'm remembering?
well, I feel like we have luckily gotten to chat about lots of different things. The things that I experienced with Nuru in Kenya, there were a few. One is that I worked with a number of women that were educators, and sometimes they just wouldn't show up for work, or they would show up and they would have signs of having been physically assaulted in some
Mm,
way. And it was a
yeah.
very accepted part of the culture. And so
Mhm.
even lightly vocalizing that this was not an okay practice was putting a target on my back in this community that is very
Mhm.
patriarchal.
Mhm.
And even the women educators that I would say, you don't have to stay, and like, let's talk about what you're experiencing and what some options are. They'd be like, no, they have to beat us to keep us in
Yeah.
line, and responses
I
like that.
yeah.
Yeah. And then we also witnessed situations where local teachers would use corporal punishment against
Mhm.
students. So cane them, hit them,
Yeah.
if they're not answering questions correctly, if they're not behaving in what they deem an acceptable way. And there was one child towards the end of my time in Kenya who did not survive that encounter with their educator. Um, yeah, and there were all kinds of like very physical confrontations between people in our
Mhm.
community over things that now seem strange to talk about, where people believe someone's using witchcraft against them or their family and things like that. And so, yeah, there's just a constant feel of threat, and also being from a place which is viewed as having a lot of wealth and privilege. So it doesn't matter what economic rung you're coming from in the States, you're viewed as someone who, and you do to a degree, have access to more resources. But there were a lot of times that I would walk by like a group of guys just kind of hanging out, and they would say, I'm going to rape you, or I'm going to rob you. And they would
Mhm.
just say it out loud
Mhm.
to you. And you're like, I'm just walking to my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
here to help your community. I'm here to help your children and help you guys raise this community out of extreme
Exactly.
poverty.
Please don't hurt me.
Yes. So yeah, there's a lot of history of colonialism that has created feeling of us and them instead of a unified feeling of we're all in this together and we're humans helping each other out, which is in a lot of ways understandable. Um, but yeah, threats of violence were never welcome for me. And
Yeah.
um, yeah,
No, thank you. You keep them today. Thank you very much.
yeah.
No, I completely understand. But you came out of this, I mean, you came back home, and for all intent and purposes, you were feeling pretty good, right? I mean, you weren't coming home going, "Oh my God, I had the worst experience ever. I'm traumatized." You went on with your life.
I mean, when I left, I took the 1 year contract here in San Francisco, going, I will move back to Kenya as soon as possible. Like, I love the people. I
Mhm.
love the community, the place, and I feel like I'm making a difference here. So while I have been here now since 2012, nonstop, so my 1 year contract kept getting extended, I had every intention to go back despite the challenges and despite the threats, because it is such a beautiful, special place. And so many of the people were incredible, welcoming, deeply resilient and resourceful. And
Mhm.
it was a joy to live there. So I hope no one listening to this would hear the negative side, because it, while disturbing and uncomfortable, I feel as much threat walking around downtown San Francisco, if not more. So it was a beautiful,
Exactly.
lovely place to
And
live.
I didn't want to highlight that to make our viewers or anybody listening think that you felt all of that stuff more highly or anything. The exact opposite in terms of, because you came out of that, and that was what year you said, 2020,
2012, I
2012.
moved here. Yeah,
I
to San
keep
Francisco.
wanting to 2020, 2020, no, to 12. Couldn't get it out. Um, so the infamous second, or the infamous plane ride
Mm.
from Marrakesh to Rome, right? What year did that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it was 2015 or 16. I don't remember exactly. I was already working at Kiva, so I moved here to San Francisco to work for a microfinance organization called Kiva, and a lot of my job was traveling. And so this was on a trip where we had been in Senegal. It's a town called Chess, even though it's pronounced or it's spelled Thies. So we had been working in Senegal, and my colleague Adam and I were like, "Oh, we're all the way over here. On the way back, we should, see some beautiful places and use some vacation days." Because when you're in nonprofits, you'll find ways to get to travel where you can save a little bit of money. So if you're already over there,
Absolutely.
yeah, so we decided to go to Morocco and then to visit a girlfriend of mine who lives in Rome and was willing to let us stay. So we were on the flight from Morocco to Rome, and my colleague wanted to watch Deadpool. Um, and we had split headphones and we're watching it, and there was a moment in the film, and I have never gone back to watch it, and you'll understand why when I finish the story, but um where Ryan Reynolds is in like a vacuum tube or something being tortured, and I think it's how he becomes a superhero or something. But again, I have not seen it, because in witnessing that experience, just of the actor in a movie, I started to feel lightheaded. I could feel like the flush kind of hot feeling
Hmm.
moving through my body. And he says, I looked at him and said, I feel kind of lightheaded. And he was like, oh, the flight's pretty turbulent. And he said, my eyes rolled back in my head and that I clenched my fists and started to shake and just
Oh my
shut down.
gosh. Yeah.
It was the second time this had happened. So the first time had been right when I left Kenya. I visited my mom in a hospital, and watching her undergo a very painful medical test. They were
Hmm.
testing the elasticity of her muscles with a very large needle, and she was in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
Um, and so the commonality was that I was witnessing people in immense pain, resembling torture,
Hmm.
and I was having a vasovagal response to witnessing it and not being able to intervene and assist. Um, and so they requested that I get an MRI, because clearly, if you're having some kind of medical issue that's causing seizures and causing you to shut down,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
shouldn't be driving a car. You shouldn't be doing all
Hmm.
these things.
Yeah.
And I got an MRI, and they said, your brain's perfect, but you should really see a therapist. And I'm from the
You're
Midwest.
like, not what I was expecting.
No, I'm from the Midwest, and while I studied social work, I had not come around to the idea of, and I'm also at this point a nonprofit worker, and was just like, how does anyone afford to see a therapist?
Yeah.
And didn't realize how deeply important it would be, and that there are a lot of ways that you can make it work. And it had I not had such a physical, visceral experience where I knew I wasn't safe, I would listen
Yeah.
to podcasts that also would just verbally describe situations of torture
Hmm.
or something, and I would start having the same response. And so in early days of therapy, it was revealed that not only is this from secondary traumatization from witnessing some pretty horrendous things in refugee camps, and I worked with specifically rape and gender-based violence prevention in the beginning of my career, anti-human trafficking, as we talked about, and saw some pretty brutal things happen. But also even further back in my own childhood, which I was like, no, 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 this is my job. This has nothing to do with my life. I live a very normal life. But my therapist helped me see that a number of childhood experiences within my own family or within a sexual assault that happened to me when I was 14, um, all contributed to this buildup, suppression over time,
Right.
um,
Right.
where
And
I,
the reason I wanted to talk about those dates is because I wanted to highlight how you felt fairly normal. I mean, for what your previous, you know, as we had discussed, you grew up having anxiety and depression and things of that nature, so that you were still having them when you came back was nothing new, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you just felt like you were kind of going along your life. I mean, you come back early, you have this seizure, like, okay, whatever, something happened, I'm okay. It's not a big deal. I just had this big long trip, blah, blah, And then 3 years later, boom, something else happens, and so you start down this path to heal for PTSD, and then boom, the doors get kicked open to this whole nother welcome to your other trauma.
Exactly. And I think how you kind of just described it made me think of like when you're watching a video of somebody who has been deaf their whole life and all of a sudden gets a hearing aid and all of a sudden, boom, they can hear. It's like
Yeah,
this has been your experience. This has been your normal for your whole life. So why would you know that there is a
yes.
different way of being and feeling and experiencing? And then luckily through healing from this trauma, it is like that hearing aid being turned on. We're like, oh, I don't have to live with all of these triggers and anxiety and depression. Not that they're not going to come and go and flow, but like that doesn't have to be my norm of
Right,
having
that doesn't
those.
have to be your baseline. Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Indigo, Indigo has a question. She says, do you think you had once compartmentalized the trauma, but once you were out of the situation, the suppression released? She said, I remember my first panic attack in my 20s and feeling the same confusion before I was diagnosed with CPTSD.
Thank you so much for asking that question. And absolutely. I think that when we're young, if we're lucky, we learn what we need to do to survive whatever situation that we're in. And that can
Mhm.
be in our household as children. Do we need to suppress our needs? Do we need to suppress our personality? Do we need to people please so that we can stay safe? And then as you move and expand your circle, maybe you have partners that you date or friends that you're around where you need to do certain things to stay safe as you become an independent individual. And so I think we compartmentalize and learn behaviors that help us survive. And luckily now with conversations like this and with questions like the one you just asked, we are opening up that we learned those behaviors, but that doesn't have to be the norm. It doesn't have to be the way forward. And I think also when I was young, a lot of these experiences that I had in and out of my household, which I think a lot of us have, instilled feelings of unworthiness. So I really started to believe that my life was not worth as much as other people's. I thought I shouldn't be here. I'm a mistake. Nobody wants me. I'm unlovable. And so to me, a good solution was suppress myself, my needs,
Mhm.
compartmentalize it all, and go out and give and support other people whose lives are I see as more worthy than my own. And the great gift of doing this healing work is learning that I am as worthy, that we are all worthy, um, and being able to uncompartmentalize and being able to be my full self, to know that I'm safe and loved. And I think my friends, my partner, my therapist have all helped me be able to feel safe, to let all of that come out of the compartments. It feels like opening all the little compartments, letting it all out, so that not only can I process what I went through, but yeah, show up as my full healing self. It's a journey. I'm not a healed self yet, but my full healed self always. And I think the gift is not having to put anything in any compartments anymore. It's all contained in me.
I think I want to speak a little bit more to you about your healing journeys and some of the coping skills you've learned. But this is really a perfect time. There was just a couple paragraphs from your book that I wanted you to read. And if you have your book there, page
I do.
77, and it's the
77.
first two full paragraphs.
Sure.
Except for the last sentence about pizza, because I'm not doing the first part, so they won't understand the last sentence. So we'll leave that one off
I'll skip it.
so that it makes sense. But otherwise, starting with these wounds.
Sure. These wounds had their purpose. Suppressing my needs and quirks into silence kept me safe throughout childhood. People pleasing elicited attention and affection from others, allowing me glimpses of what acceptance, belonging, and love might feel like. Workaholism and martyrdom won me trophies, titles, praise, raises, admiration, and at least momentarily, a sense of worthiness. The belief that I'd never be good enough or deserving of love softened every rejection into an expectation and confirmation of my unworthiness rather than a disappointment. Some religious practices believe that life's lessons are laid upon our hearts, waiting for them to break, then enter through the cracks to help us heal and grow. Reflecting on these long-held beliefs and behaviors, I can see how they helped the little girl I was to survive and navigate life and its challenges. But they've served their purpose. My heart has grown from the lessons they carried. The woman I am today can thank and release them, moving forward lighter and unburdened.
Thank you. I think that so many of us can empathize and sympathize with you in regards to all of that. And I hope, I mean, that's my hope for every single person out there, a survivor of whatever your trauma is that you can get through to a more healed place, right? Because we say that we're always healing, but getting to that point where you can let that stuff go. Elsa had something right, right? I mean, because holding on to it, we talk about this all the time with holding on to anger and resentment of somebody else. That's hurting you more than it's hurting them, and they're taking up negative space. It's taking up space in a negative way in you. And when we can learn to release all of that stuff and truly accept ourselves, and at some points, during our healing journey, accepting our limitations because they come up, whether it's because a trigger happened or because we're going through a transitions a transitory period. I can't even say that today. Goodness gracious. Transitory period. Thank you very much. Uh, we're all going to feel that way at times. And uh, yeah, I just think that was a really a great space to have that and to hear what you had to say on that. And I wanted to speak to you a little bit about your healing journey and what worked for you as you kind of worked through. You mentioned therapy, and that was a strong component for you to have somebody else talk to you about trauma and kind of work through that with you. How did you find that in the beginning? I mean, you said you weren't really a therapist for therapist person. Was there was it kind of just a slow acceptance of the what you were trying to do or what the therapist was trying to get you to do? Or was there a moment a few sessions in that was just like, bang, this is actually kind of working? Or
Yeah, I really didn't understand it, and I didn't know a lot of people. My family is still sort of Midwestern in their resistance to therapy, and so I sort of went in, I was like, "Oh, am I just supposed to make people please this person, like tell them what they want to hear?" And
yeah,
luckily, I have a very incredible therapist who was able to, in a few sessions, kind of get me to open up and understand that this was an opportunity for me, that this is a impartial, objective person who can hopefully help me better understand what I need to process and
Mhm.
release, accept, to be able to heal internally. And as we developed our partnership in doing this work, I started recommending, and I still recommend therapy to everyone. If you have a good therapist, I think it's like going to the gym for your insides. It's like
Yeah.
it is the building the muscles and like working on your well-being and health internally. And I hope people have that opportunity as much as they do externally to work on their physical health. Um, and I think
Because
she
I
did a
think we
few.
spoke she's trauma informed, right? She's a trauma informed therapist.
Yes. And I didn't mention how I found her, which, if it helps anyone, I just asked my manager at work, who I knew went to therapy. I said, "How did you find your therapist?" And she just said, "Actually, let me connect you to my therapist, and she won't be yours because we work together. So we'll probably someday
Mhm.
say, I have thoughts about this person, but
Yeah,
she
right.
will help connect you." And so her therapist had a quick call with me, asked me what I was looking for, learned a little bit about me, and was able to direct me to someone she recommended for what I was looking for and what my
Awesome.
experience was.
It's
And
really
I
great.
am still a
That's perfect.
perfect match made in heaven with that woman. And so many moments. I remember a specific moment that made me go, "Oh, this woman gets me. And this is helping." Where, we sometimes we wouldn't just talk about past traumas and big T
Mhm.
traumas. We would just go, "I'm struggling with my weight, or I'm struggling with my job, or I'm struggling with dating, or I'm struggling with something."
Right.
And one observation she made was, how are you ever going to know if something's a good fit for you if you are, clay or Play-Doh, molding yourself to the shape of the job and molding
Mm.
yourself to the shape of the people? She's like, "I think when you were younger, you learned I have to be pliable and I have to fit the shape of what people want from me for safety." And she goes, "You don't have to do that anymore. You can define what your shape is and show it to people so you know if the job is a right fit. So you know if the person is a good fit as a partner for you. You don't have to just mold yourself to what everyone else wants you to be." And that moment I was like, that sounds like me. And I never would have seen that about myself. And how beautiful that someone could listen to me and be able to reflect that back. And I still think about it at times because I do have a historic people pleaser that came from a desire
Right.
for survival
Yes.
and safety when I was young. And it's easy to want to get pulled back there when someone's upset or angry or doesn't agree with the way I'm
Mm,
doing
mhm.
something, job or whatever. And I go, you know what? This is my shape. I'm very clear on what my shape is now. And this is what I believe the way forward is. So,
I love that vision of, are we the potter's clay or are we fired clay? Are we that hardened, this is what I am, or are we just the clay that he's just gonna put into whatever? And do we mold ourselves to? And I love that, thinking about, I mean, we can think about it in terms of friendships and in terms of relationships, but yeah, in terms of work as well. Because I think a lot of people, it's like they need a job, they're gonna take a job. Are you is that job gonna make you happy? Um,
yeah.
you know, type of thing. But yeah, it can be with anything. I think especially when it comes to other people who are close to us. I think a lot of us who are those more of those people pleaser in the past, at least, have seen ourselves uh, brush off people's excuses and be more acceptable of inconsiderate behavior. Whether there's
Yeah.
maliciousness behind it or not, but right then we need to be.
Yeah.
And when we know ourselves, then we can say, no, this is my boundary, and this is what I feel is acceptable. And it may not be the same place for you. And two people with different boundaries, as long as we can respect them and respect that yours is here and mine is here, we can still possibly be friends. There may be other people that you come into contact with who, just for whatever reason, all of that just doesn't match, right? And it's just, and it doesn't necessarily, and this is one of the things that I've had to learn and accept as I've grown old, is that that person can still be a good person, right? And can be a good friend to somebody else. But I think when you have some sort of meanness or judgment or something that you're taking so personal, right? It's hard to say it's hard to see that because it's easier to see the meanness in people, right? It's I think as a general population, it's easier to believe the negative, right? When a story comes out about something, are we and their story is on the other side, are we more eager to believe the negative side of it, or oh no, he's probably a good guy, right? And I think that we do that to ourselves.
Well, I love all of this. I would say on the first part, I would say that your shape may change over time, but I think the important part of the shape analogy for me is knowing that I get to define what that shape is at any given moment, not mold
Hmm.
myself to what I think someone else wants my shape to be.
Right.
And on the other side, I think one of the things that has helped me the most is that I think coming with feelings of that you're unworthy and that you're something's wrong with you, which was a
Hmm.
big predominant feeling of my childhood, is that I didn't instantly believe the negative about other people because I was so worried that everyone was seeing the negative about me, that I was doing everything wrong, that I was a waste of space, that I was fully unlovable. And so I was so concerned about that judgment that I grew up, I feel like, with almost no judgment towards others, which I'm really grateful for now because I think what it helps me with, I have no expectations from other people. I assume everyone is always doing their best. I don't agree with their best all the time, and look at politics now, look at um inhumane ways of treating people in our society and our
Hmm.
culture. I don't agree with it, but I always look at it with, my behavior and decisions were informed by my experience and what I needed to do to survive and be loved and accepted, or what I believed I needed to do to be loved and accepted when I was younger. I think we're all always doing that. We have an innate desire to be accepted and to belong and to feel safe and loved. But we have different experiences and backgrounds that lead us to what we think that looks like. So some people
Hmm.
think that looks like I need to be powerful. I need to have control. I need
Mm.
to show people I'm hard minded on this thing, or that I can lead, or whatever it is. Are doing what they think needs to be done for them to be accepted and loved in the way that they want to experience. It's not always a way that's going to result in their desired outcomes, but I have to believe everyone is acting from their best, even when it's pretty bad. And you're like, that's the best you could do in this moment. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're all trying our best to achieve what we need as humans. Some of us are doing it from very trauma informed or very damaged backgrounds. So yeah, it's very hard for me to believe the worst about people because I look at them and I'm like, you clearly don't feel safe and loved in your relationship because you're cheating or because you're, lying or whatever it is. What would help you get there? What is it that has made you feel like you have to lie about who you are and what you do, or that you have
Right.
to
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so there's a Thich Nhat Hanh quote that I named my chapter after in our shared book, which is the full quote we say every morning over coffee, my partner Kevin and I, which is, waking up this morning, I smile. 24 brand new hours lay before me. I vow to live fully in each moment and to look at all beings with eyes of compassion. And we add, especially ourselves at the end, because that's who we have the hardest time looking at with compassion. But
Oh yeah.
one of our teachers adds, especially my partner, because that's who he has the hardest time extending that compassion. But I think if you're always looking at people with eyes of compassion, you're always pausing and taking a moment to go, what is it that is causing this behavior? And what is it that you need to feel loved and belonging? Um, so yeah, anyway, that's my response to, I don't feel the propensity to look at people with negativity, because I'm always just
That's interesting, and I guess, because for me, I have always had, but that's the kind of environment I was growing up in, right? When
like,
there's just always negativity about everything. And
"Oh,
I was a people pleaser to an extent. I was more of a I have to follow the rules person. And
mhm,
and if that means ratting on somebody, then I rat on somebody because the rules come first. I mean, I was raised by a Marine, so this is kind of how things are. There's one way to do things. There's one right answer for everything. There's so judgment was kind of a thing in our house. So, but no, I love that. And so besides, I did want to ask you, besides therapy, what were some of the other things that you gravitated towards that you feel kind of really helped you in your healing journey? What kind of coping skills or
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. It might be controversial with some people, but it is my life experience that after moving to San Francisco, and this is in my chapter as well, I was hearing about Burning Man and I didn't know what it was. The first date that I ever went on, the guy was like, "Oh, I'm a burner." And I was like, you're into like pyromania? Like, I don't understand what it means,
I'm
because I
thinking
was,
pothead.
yeah, I'm coming from Kenya and I'm like,
Yeah.
what is this? Um, and over time, you learn in San Francisco, a lot of people go to this event in the desert that is Burning Man. And going, which I eventually did because my boss at work, who recommended the therapist, went first. And I said, if you like it and recommend it, I will try it. So she went, she came back, she said, you should go. Everyone should go if they get the chance and they have the openness to the opportunity. Um, so in going, I recorded a voice memo to myself when I first got back, um, just to not lose the memory of the impact that
Hmm.
the experience had had on me. And I think a lot of people think that Burning Man is like this drug fueled like orgy or something in the desert. I went to TED
Yeah.
Talks. I went to a gymnastics workshop. I went to a meditation workshop. I
Wow.
cheered on the marathon runners as they did their marathon. Like, I had a very PG, lovely experience that was so profound and meaningful. And I came back, and this voice memo to myself says a lot of really beautiful things, but towards the end of it, there's this moment where my voice cracks, where it's just like, you're safe and loved. And if by no one else, even if you get abandoned by everyone else who loves you, which you have so many people that love you, if you just look around and realize it, I will always love you. And to hear myself finally express to myself that not only liked but loved the human that I was, and that I had my back no matter what happened. I I mean, I was like 30 something when that happened, where thank goodness some people find that self-love earlier, where they're like, you are a worthy human being. You're worthy of the air that you breathe, and you're worthy to be here. I finally found that in the desert with a bunch of strangers, because one of the beautiful things about events like that is that it is a community that is very non-judgmental, and your worthiness comes with just being there, and you are perceived and treated as beautiful and welcome and loved and safe and held, no matter who you are, what you look like. As long as you are being kind and safe, everyone else will be kind and safe with you. And
It's on my bucket list.
yeah. So I would say that was the most transformative, in addition to my therapist. And since then, I've had lots of opportunities to connect with other forms of therapy, medicinal therapy, sound healing experiences, um, forest baths, nature walks, like all of these things that are deeply healing and resonant. And last year, I also took a year-long class called A Year to Live, which is run out of Spirit Rock Meditation, which is in the North Bay, just north of us here in San Francisco. But it had about 600 other students in the class from all around the world. We had students from South
Wow.
Africa, from the Netherlands, from everywhere. And we just spend a year working uh, through the idea of death and dying. And what that does is give you a profound connection to life and living.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, all of it has been deeply healing. And for somebody that when I was young didn't think I deserved to live, and for that reason, when I was quite young, had some suicidal ideation and severe depression, to for the first time in this class go, I clearly now honor life and want to live and want to be here and understand that I have a right to be here. So all of these different things have added together to.
Well, I think it's such a beautiful message, and it's it's the other passage actually that I wanted you to read to us, and I wanted to go out on. And it begins. It's that last little paragraph, "To this day, Burning Man," on page 80. Before I have you read that full paragraph going into the next page, ends that little section. I'll have you read that, but I wanted to say I think it's such an important message that we talk about all the time on here about learning to love ourselves, and it really is learning for a lot of us. I mean, especially if we're coming out of childhood traumas, there are just, and if you haven't dealt with them or dealt with them fully, um, there's going to be aspects of that where it's really hard for us to love ourselves. I know that I had in a certain way, but now that my life is changing and I have totally different responsibilities than I did before, it's just a whole new aspect and a whole new way of looking at it. And uh, for me, looking at myself and going, okay, there's this piece of me that was busy with another person, and now I no longer have that person to take care of, so I have this other time, and that really is reflecting back on me as to what I'm doing with this time, and how am I living. So it's an ever changing thing. um, and so yeah. So before I have you read this, I had a reminder for myself. I have to do our reminders for the week. My reminder is that our next scheduled live will be Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We have a guest on, and it's continuing in our human trafficking series, a woman by the name of Jessica Kay. She is a therapist now. She works with a lot of survivors, but she is a survivor of sex trafficking herself. And so she's going to be talking about her story, how she ended getting pulled up out of it, which is really kind of by the grace of God type of thing, and how she really is a pull yourself up by your bootstraps person. She turned her life around on her own, which is incredible. Not a lot of people can do what she did, and she put herself back to school, went to college, got her master's degree in therapy, and now is working with therapists and being an advocate. So she's just an amazing woman. She's got an amazing story, and so you guys can join us. You can watch live at 6 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday, or you can catch replay for that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, and I will have her read her last paragraph on Burning Man. And this so sums up what I wish for everybody out there.
Thank you. Um, to this day, Burning Man remains the single most transformative and life-changing adventure I've undertaken, and I returned for a decade. It was there, witnessing people of all shapes, sizes, colors, and creeds being warmly accepted just as they are, that I was able to accept myself fully, just as I am. It's where I experienced real, unconditional love from and for myself for the first time, where I began to live and believe the most important truth anyone can realize. There is nothing wrong with me. There never was and never will be. I'm perfect just as I am while ever evolving. My value is and always has been untouchably within me, innate, unchanging, and unrelated to my productivity, performance, or achievements. I am, always have been, and always will be worthy and deserving of unconditional acceptance and love, just like all beings, just like you.
I think that's a perfect message to end on. And it is because this is how I end every single show. remember. Before I even say this, though, let me say my thanks to you, to Jessica, for being here today, for telling us parts of your story. And you can read other pieces in her book, our book, Begin It Now, right? And she has an amazing chapter in there. A few different pieces of her life that brought her messages and kind of put things into perspective for her. So we always end every show with this line. It is, remember, you are worthy, you are valuable, and you are loved just the way you are for who you are. So hugs and love from me. I will talk to you guys later. Jessica, if you want to hang out backstage, you can. My outro is a little long. It's about 3 minutes. So you feel free to get up and use the bathroom or take a break or whatever. And I'll see you at the end if you guys are here. So remember, surviving together, never alone. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
Through the fire, through the rain, we have walked through endless pain, but we stand, we rise again, stronger now, we break the chain, surviving together, hearts open wide, lifting each other through every tide. The past may have shaped us, but it won't define. Together we heal, together we shine. Every tear, every scar tells the story of who we are. Not just survive